Hey there, it's Jenny. This is the first in what I hope will be a series of videos focusing really on some functional use cases, features, and explorations of what you can do in large language models. Today, I want to focus on one of my favorite features that I think too few people even know exists, and that is the edit button. And to show you how it works, I'm going to dive right in and use the edit button live to give you a sense of why the edit button is so important and how to use it as effectively as possible. Okay. Forgive me in advance. I am a loud ass typer and it comes through on this recording, but we're just going to deal with it. Okay, so let's say we start with let's discuss the future of work. And it's going to go in, it's going to talk all about the future of work. It's going to go into automation and AI integration. It's gonna go into soft skills. It's gonna go into remote and hybrid work. So you see it's covering a lot of ground, but this ground is all pretty shallow while really broad. But let's say that I actually realize when I see this that I actually had a more specific question in mind. So we go up. Okay, I'm gonna stop this here and I'm gonna say edit message. You see there, let's hit cancel. You see there, they hide it. I think they hide it because they don't want you to have this power, but I'm going to give it to you. So if you hover over any message that you have entered into ChatGPT, this little pencil icon will pop up. You hit the pencil icon, you can change your message. So let's say we're going to focus on remote work trends. After all, I live in Durham, North Carolina. I work with people all over the country and all over the world. That's probably maybe more relevant to me than some of these other things. So let's hit send and see what happens. Before I do, let's go up here and you see here, remote and hybrid work, we get this little sort of 3-bullet rundown. What happens when we say that's all I want to focus on? And now you see that I'm getting a much, much more focused answer. One of the things to know about large language models is they have an output cap. They can only give you so many characters in any given response, and they will try to answer your query to the best of their abilities. So if you ask it a super broad question, like let's discuss the future of work, it's going to give you everything it can at a level of depth that will fit into the answer. So when I ask a more specific question, I get a much more detailed answer. Okay, so let's say now I have broken down all of these trends about remote work and I decide, let's see, how might this affect urban planning? I'm curious to know how the future of remote work is going to impact where I live and where I work and how that looks like. Okay, so it's going to go all into this. And it's talking about some of the changes that happen as a result of shifting to a remote/hybrid work structure. And I'm reading this and I'm like, okay, that's cool, whatever. But actually, I have a much more selfish question. So I go back and I hit my handy dandy edit button and I say, how does this affect work-life balance? And now I'm having a completely different conversation, this time about work-life balance. So it's going to go all into this. Some of the positive impacts, some of the challenging impacts of work-life balance. And what I think is really cool is when you go back up, you'll see this little handy dandy arrow thing after you edit, which means that I can go back to any conversation that I've had. So if you almost imagine each conversation as sort of a world that I'm building with the model, I've basically branched off into multiple multiverses, right? So in one universe, we're talking about how remote work trends might impact urban planning. In the next, we're talking about how it might affect work-life balance. Maybe I want to say, how will this affect borders and government? And it dives all into that. And so what's kind of cool is, say you're working on something where you're trying to kind of look at a meaty topic from a bunch of different angles, you can actually use the edit button to be able to unpack a couple of different ways of looking at something all in the same conversation without losing any of your threads. And what's important about this too is you can see that it's going in pretty deeply into all of these, But if I stop it and I say, okay, let's just get a little crazy. How might this affect urban planning, work-life balance, and borders and government? You can see that it's giving me a lot of the information that I was getting in some of the previous ones, but it's not at the same level of depth. And that goes back to what I was saying before, which is that it has a certain number of characters, we'll say tokens is the official term, that it can output with any given response. And it has to fit sort of everything that you're asking it to answer in that response. And so one of the beautiful use cases of the edit button is that it lets you sort of dive into different angles of something without losing the thread of your conversation, without having 18 different conversations. So you can sort of build this out and then branch on any way that you want as you go deeper into the conversation. But let's say that I was like, you know what? I actually do like this larger question. So we go all the way back to my first conversation where we're talking about the future of work at a broader level. And let's say that I want to know, let's see, what skills will be most valuable as the future of work unfolds? And so it's talking to me about the value of technical skills, the value of cognitive skills. And as I'm looking at this, I'm like, you know what? Do I really care if they're valuable or do I really care if they're special? And I'm like, you know what? I actually think I care if they're special. So I'm going to stop this. I'm going to hit my edit button. I'm going to change valuable to rare. And I'm going to see what I get. And so you see here it goes from technical skills to things like problem solving and critical thinking, emotional intelligence, creativity, and innovation. So basically, by one word, changing it from valuable to rare, I completely change the focus of the conversation and I completely change the direction that it goes. And the reason why this is so important is because of the way large language models work. So when I ask a question or put a message into a large language model, so let's discuss the future of work. What happens is it breaks these words up into tokens. Now, this is going to be a massive overgeneralization. If anybody's interested more in the actual sort of function of how large language models works, that would be a different video. But at a very high level, it sort of takes this and it runs it sort of through the Plinko board of all its transformer layers to determine what it's going to say next. But then when I go in and I ask this question about what skills will be most valuable as the future of work unfolds, it runs, let's discuss the future of work, all of its answer and this next question to determine what it's going to say next. So let's say that I come in and I want to do something completely differently. So write a flash fiction piece that takes place in an ancient forest. I'm not giving it very many details. I just want to see what it will do. So it's telling me this story. Oh, an intruder, something not born of this world, but twisted into existence by forces that sought to corrupt the ancient order. All right, so it's telling me this story. That's great. That's great. The Guardian staff blazes with light. It's a very good story. Their stories are always end with a happy ending. Okay. Now I'm going to say, how did the context of our conversation influence the story you crafted? And I'm actually not going to say how because that assumes or not. Why or why not? So you see here that the conversation about the future of work had an impact in the story that it told. And so that's why the edit button is so important, because every single thing that happens in a conversation is influenced, directed, and dictated by everything that happened in the conversation before. Not just what you asked, but also what the model answered. So if you are not using the edit button, you're not actually controlling the way that these multiverses of conversations unfold, which is important. But there's actually something even more important that I want to show you. And that is that this actually gives you the opportunity to learn how to control the flow of reality in your own life in a different way. If you think about a conversation with a person, they only go one way. You know, say you're having a tough conversation with somebody and you say something that you didn't mean. You can't rewind and start that conversation again. You can apologize, you can try to clarify, you can fix it as best you can, but once uttered, it cannot be unuttered. The beautiful thing about large language models is that they don't work that way. So let's say that I have to have a really hard conversation with my boss about a yogurt campaign that's underperforming. I can actually use the model to practice that conversation and take advantage of some of the ways that I can shape reality in a large language model that I can't in an actual conversation with a real person. So let's give this a go. I want to simulate a conversation with my boss. It's not going to be an easy one. You'll role play as my boss. I will role play as me. Try to be as true to human reaction as possible. You're not the world's best boss. You're just a regular boss. Do not break the simulation unless I say in simulation. Okay, so I'm just basically setting up this little conversation that I'm going to have with my boss. Okay, now say that this stupid campaign is not something that you are very happy about. Let's see. Hey, I want to talk to you about what went wrong with the Breeze yogurt campaign. And okay, now let's say you're pissed. Let's say you're pissed. Let's say your boss did not give you the support that you needed and you just want to get it out of your system. You know what? Everything went wrong and it's all your fault. I told you I needed more support and you didn't listen. I told you I needed more resources and I didn't get them. I think the real problem is that you suck at your job. Okay, you get that out of your system. You're like, okay, this isn't the point. The point isn't about me being constructive. Let's try this again. Let me start by breaking down what happened. I'll dig into all the ways I tried to address the issues, share with you the challenges I faced, and suggest what we can do differently next time. And you see here now that I have actually had a more positive response. So this first one, when I said, it's all your fault, you did everything wrong. And now we're a little bit on the defensive because my boss just told me I have to be more constructive. Then I try again, and you can see here that I've gotten a more positive response. And I can kind of practice this as long as I want. I can continue the conversation. I can branch off. I can try different strategies. I can see how those strategies play out. I can use the questions that my imaginary boss gives me to anticipate questions from my real boss and basically sort of control the way that this simulation runs out. Try 17 different ways to frame it, 17 different ways to tell the story, so that when I go into actual reality, into a conversation that I can't rewind and start over, I actually have had the experience of playing it out 27 different ways so that I'm in complete control of what happens in real life, even though I can't actually rewind that conversation. Hope this was helpful. Hope it was interesting. Hope it made your brain think a little bit differently about what's possible. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, if you have any requests of what you'd like me to cover in future videos, go ahead and drop a comment. I'd like to do more of these, and I hope they're useful. Thank you.